Well, despite the French reaction, the dust will settle on this historic trilateral partnership between Australia, the UK and the US. But it's still not known who really drove the federal government to torpedo Malcolm Turnbull's dud project and take up state-of-the-art nuclear submarines. Was it the Prime Minister, who'd continually reported that the $90 million diesel build was on track and the contract would be honoured? Or was it one of his AUKUS partners who wanted Australia to ditch the old and bring in the new? We don't know that yet, but one thing is for sure. For 8 long years, there's been a chorus of critics calling for the government to bite the bullet and go nuclear. One of those voices has been the well-researched and former submariner, South Australian Senator Rex Patrick. Described by many as Inspector Rex, the Senator knows both the diesel and nuclear submarines like no other politician. I caught up with the Senator earlier in the week. Rex Patrick, thank you so much for your time.
You're most welcome, Chris.
Well, you'd be a happy former submariner. We've ditched the French diesel sub project for the real deal.
Yeah, look, I'm very comfortable with the government's decision to pull the shutters down on this project. It was a project that was $40 billion over budget. It was running late. It was likely to not deliver us a regionally superior submarine, and it certainly wasn't meeting industry expectations. My only regret in this decision is that it's taken so long to get to this place.
But the government just ploughed on with this soon-to-be obsolete project, despite all the advice from people like you, JCAR boss, the late Gary Johnston, and many other experts.
Yeah, look, it was a project that was laden with risk. We had no control over things like costs because we, very early on in the piece, basically down-selected to one player, a commercial player, and at that point in time, we lost all the leverage that we needed. Again, it's a good decision that the government's made, just one that is late. We must remember that this is a failed project. I just hope we don't jump from the frying pan into the fire.
Explain to my viewers why there is simply no comparison between nuclear-powered and a diesel retrofitted sub. You've been on both, right?
I have, and look, there are good things about nuclear-powered submarines, and there are some areas where they don't do as well as conventional submarines, but in overall, they're a very capable machine. One of the things that is most dominant in relation to a nuclear-powered submarine is that infinite energy source that is provided by way of the reactor. That allows a submarine to go down to a couple hundred metres, spin the propellers up to 30 knots, and get to places quickly. Often we see nuclear submarines arriving on scene. In fact, you don't see them because they arrive secretly, but they appear on scene from a military perspective very early on in the piece, well before other forces arrive, and they can basically build up a picture of what's going on. Incredibly capable. Because they're larger, they carry more weapons, they carry more sensors, generally can stay out again for longer because it's not just the energy source, it's about how much food you can store as well to keep the crew going. There are a couple of areas where nuclear submarines don't do quite as well. There are circumstances where a conventional submarine can be quieter when it's running on batteries or something like a fuel cell. And the other area where conventional submarines generally do better, and this is because they're normally smaller, is in shallow water where manoeuvrability is required. So it's like anything. You can find a something like a Ferrari and think it's the best car in the world until you decide to take it off road, and then it's by no means the best car in the world. So, horses for courses.
It didn't take long, Rex, for the Greens to say they were scared, saying the subs will be floating Chernobyls.
Look, again, I'm the only parliamentarian that's been to sea on a nuclear-powered submarine and slept for days nearby a reactor. What I will say is this. I felt very, very safe in a nuclear submarine being operated by the US Navy. Now, that's an important statement because we have some really big challenges ahead. Just because we get their boats which are safe, if we don't get it right, then we will potentially run into problems. And so it's really important that we proceed with great diligence from here on in.
Anyway, you joined the Navy at 16 years of age and over 11 years served on both Oberon and Collins class subs. You know this space. You must fancy confined spaces, do you?
Yes, look, little did I know that my submarine life was going to prepare me so well for COVID and self-isolation. I found myself, when I did get COVID, locked up in my apartment, and because of my submarine days, I felt like I had to go and lock myself in the cupboard because there was too much space. But look, it was a wonderful life, something great, and I would recommend it to any young man or woman that is seeking a career. Just a fantastic experience all up. We had to work really hard, and look, there's a lot of things that I learnt during my days in the submarine force that still carry over and are used by me today.
Like not getting caught out in your Reg Grundies when a fire broke out on board, I hope?
Someone's been telling tales. Look, one of the things is on a submarine, if there's a fire, you have to get it out really, really quickly. So the moment an alarm goes off, if you're standing around having just got out of your rack, and you're in your jocks, and you're 10 metres away from where the fire is, if you can get a fire extinguisher to that fire and put it out instantly, that's what you do. So look, you've been you're well informed. I just hope no one got a video of it.
Just a final question on subs. Remind us again why you wore a sub costume into the Senate one day.
Well, today's a good day, or this week's been a good week for South Australia, having retained the full cycle docking work that the government was thinking about shifting across to Western Australia. I have been fighting that move. I didn't think it was a sensible move. We have a working submarine force that's gone through a lot of pain. We now have great submarine availability, and a lot of that's put down to a very skilled workforce in Adelaide. I didn't like the idea of just taking something that worked and shifting it across to Western Australia at a cost of $1 billion in circumstances where only 10% of that very experienced workforce were prepared to move. I had to do whatever I could to draw attention to the fact that we needed to retain that submarine capability here in South Australia. And even with this new news about a nuclear submarine program, that won't deliver a new submarine for 10, 15, perhaps 20 years. We have to make sure the Collins class submarines are ready to go at any stage. The maritime commander needs to know that there is a submarine available if he needs to deploy one.
Which brings me to the hard work you do. Nick Xenophon used to call you Inspector Rex, the investigative MP. You do your homework. And it's amazing, Rex, how many MPs rely on a staffer's summary sheet. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, look, I have an engineering background. In some sense, I am an accidental senator. I took over from Nick Xenophon. I never really wanted to be a senator. Look, I absolutely take the job seriously now, but I came from submarines, then through an engineering life as a project manager, working in the field, testing the products that my teams were developing. Then basically ended up working for Nick Xenophon, and never intended to be in this place. So I think it's unusual that you find engineers in the parliament, because most engineers are, and I say this in the most respectful way, are kind of nerdy, characters that probably can't excite regular people. I say that with absolute respect. I used to run project teams. I used to, squeeze open the door and put food in, and hopefully 6 months later came out a wonderful product that the company I was working for could then market and sell.
To your party, the new Rex Patrick team has been running for 12 months now. I get the feeling you prefer to operate solo.
Yeah, look, even in the small party, you end up being conflicted in terms of views. Sometimes, a player a member of the party has a very strong view about something, you might have a contrary view, and that can create a problem. We see that all the time in the major parties. Lots of really good people go into politics, and they want to basically change the world. They get in the door, and what they find is they're trapped within party lines. They're trapped with people who have made their way to the top of the tree inside that party. They're now either ministers or shadow ministers, and they don't want some new person disrupting and indeed taking carriage of things that they've worked so hard for. If you step out of line in a major party, suddenly you find you're not getting pre-selected, and that doesn't really happen as the party gets smaller, but there is still potential. I have the ability to speak my mind. I don't have party lines. If someone comes to me with an issue, I simply look at the issue and I say, right, I agree with this person. What am I going to do about it? Am I going to write to a minister? Am I going to do a speech in the parliament? Am I going to go to the media? Am I going to call for an inquiry? Am I going to ask questions on notice? Am I going to ask questions at question time? I have very few constraints, and that's the way I love to operate. I do my homework, then I apply all the tools available to me as a senator to try and change an outcome.